Fragile people break, tough people endure but don't learn. Anti-fragile people get better, faster, stronger when shit gets hard.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Dr. J.J. Thomas Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Dr. J.J. Thomas Podcast. I'm JJ and I'm here with a very special guest. I'm so lucky to have him here today. His name is Mike Moor. Most of you probably know him as Mindset Mike. I'm really excited for this show today. Mike is a very successful mindset coach. And I should say he's successful because he has a lot of successful athletes under his belt and under his portfolio. So I'm looking forward to getting into the mindset of Mindset Mike today. Here we go.
Let's do it.
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
I had an easy drive besides the one closed exit coming here from Newark. I'm in town for UFC Fight Week.
Yes.
I have a guy, I think he's ranked 13 in the world. He's fighting number 6.
Awesome.
I've never seen a guy so big, so strong, so fast, but so happy. So I'm just like really, really excited to see him. This is the first. He's Moldovan, so it's Alexander Romanov, and he's the first guy that I've ever really interacted with, like of European descent, to be so emotionally intelligent. So he really, it's a completely different version of him than he's ever felt. So I'm excited for the UFC to see a completely different version of him as a fighter.
So you mean as you've worked with him, a completely different version has come out? That's so cool.
Like his coaches are like, he's unrecognizable in practice, like just a massive transformation. Reminds me like when I worked with Wei Li when she was very stoic all the time. And then in the fights, the 2 fights we got to work together, when she fought Joanna, she's flirting with Colby Covington.
Oh my God.
in the weigh-ins.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she's smiling, giggling. Just chilling, like happy to be there. Happy fighters are dangerous fighters.
So awesome. Yeah, because the confidence you need to be able to have that settle, like that personality is, it's hard to touch.
Yes.
So how long have you been working with him?
Last couple months. This is my first fight camp with him. We didn't start as a fight camp. It was we didn't have a fight scheduled, but his head coach Mike Stewart and I go way back, and we were just waiting for the right time for me to work with Alexander. And so I started working with him a couple months ago. Midway through, he got the fight announcement,
awesome.
top 10 matchup. So yeah, last couple months has been really transformative. So I'm excited to see what he does.
Yeah, that's exciting. So by the time you guys get this show out, it takes me a couple weeks. We're like a couple weeks in advance, so we'll have the results already before our show comes out. But the fight's this Friday night, right? So tomorrow or Saturday night. Saturday night. So very exciting.
Main card. Check them out. Fight's going to be over by the time you see this, but I hope you guys check it out. Main card, Alexander Romanov.
Yeah. Awesome. I definitely will. I'll be seeing it Saturday.
I hope you go there.
I know. I haven't figured out if I'm going in person or not, but either way I'll be watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. I want to talk a little bit more for the people watching about your background.
Sure.
Because I think whether you're a mindset coach or a physical therapist or a accountant, I think a lot of what makes us who we are and our gifts towards other people comes from where we came from. So I love to hear about your background and your story a little bit more. I know a little bit. I know you started like in the FBI or something like that, right? Tell me.
So I wrestled my whole life. Knew by the time I was about a junior in high school that I wanted to go like a federal law enforcement route. So every decision I made around that time kind of went in that direction. So I went to college, studied criminology, psychology, and out of college I was in Department of Homeland Security with the intention to go like FBI, CIA, something like that.
Cool.
So I got into the FBI about 6 months into my stint with Homeland Security, and I was there for about 7 years.
Wow.
So I got to do national security surveillance. I got to do behavioral science research, crisis negotiation, forensic accounting.
Awesome.
Yeah, I took my FBI career similar to the way that I approached college. Criminology, well, first of all, most people think I get a criminal justice degree. I got a criminology degree because I was more interested in theory. Cool. My whole goal was that I wanted to be in the behavioral science unit and be people that were chasing down serial killers, rapists, like, high profile psychology type stuff. So I, in college, took that degree, which a lot of football players take, but it made it very difficult, very challenging, right? And I took lots of courses to really broaden my knowledge. Well, that's what I did in the FBI, except it's free. Didn't cost me $10,000 per course. Yeah. So I just took as many trainings as I possibly could, and got as many certifications, experiences as I could. So yeah, I got a lot of interesting knowledge and perspective.
Yeah.
Being 22 to 29 years old, I was the youngest member of the Washington D.C. field office.
Wow.
All employees for 2 years. So like being that young in your dream job, making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. And
learning a lot in a very fast-paced environment. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be where I am now.
100%.
Definitely wasn't fun sometimes going through it, but it was a really good experience.
And I'm sure, the stakes, like you jumped right into a high stake environment where, like, I picture, you said crisis negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And the stakes of that are huge. So I'm sure, like, I'm listening to your story. I know you were a D1 wrestler.
Correct.
Too, right? So
I was actually going to say, like, my experiences in wrestling at the highest level allowed me to prepare for something like that.
yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I was thinking like you were high stakes. And to me, a lot of, as a physical therapist with my athletes and even my non-athlete patients, I feel like everything comes, so much of success comes from stakes. And
Yeah.
I know it's hard to see you a little bit. So the high stakes environment, and you already had that through D1 wrestling.
Yes.
But then you take it to another environment like FBI, and you're like, wow, these stakes are something beyond my own ego, my own, upset, and not just myself, but the team.
Competing is competing. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I've learned. So, like, for me, these 2 championship rings are from a sport I've never played.
Yeah.
Right? Like, mindset is mindset.
Yes.
So, like when having learned to compete at the highest level, you can compete in business, you can compete in daily life.
Yes.
We're on the same page. So
Yes.
like the experiences competing in those environments, while they're not the same, it still felt very similar. Yes, the stakes were much higher, but the example I give to my clients, like, a big part of what I provide is like a blueprint to reverse engineer the best version of you.
Awesome.
Right? What does the best version of you look like? How can we make sure it comes up every time, especially in the big moments, right?
Yeah.
So when you can learn how to do that through sports, it allows you to at least have a platform
Sure.
that you can then apply that in your professional
And you
life.
practiced it.
For sure. So
Yeah.
think about it like this, like physical therapist, or let's take a notch up, and let's take a heart surgeon. Why is it that heart surgeons, that's the most high stakes environment, you literally have someone's life force in your hands.
Totally.
Do they have a lot of bad days? Probably not.
I
At work.
Right.
Like, do they have a lot of bad
Oh,
days
no,
at
'cause
work?
they're helping people.
No,
Right?
no. But like, I'm more so saying performance-wise.
Oh,
Like,
right.
Athletes like, I had a bad day this
right.
weekend.
Yeah.
Heart surgeons don't have a bad day.
No.
Like
They can't afford to.
Yeah, brain surgeons don't have a bad day, but
That's
like,
right.
why can an athlete afford to have
Sure.
a bad day?
No, it's
like,
right.
a heart surgeon follows strategy and not emotion.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we have these circumstances, I'm going to follow these procedures, and if these things happen, prepare these things, God forbid.
Right.
Right? So when athletes can learn how to do that,
That's
then
great.
they can follow strategy and not emotion as well.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
The other thing you said that I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was thinking like these rings are from sports that I don't play, but it's funny because I say to my athletes all the time, like, your sport is my sport. Your success is my success. Like, my competition is getting you to your competition.
I love that.
And I think as physical therapists, we should think of it like that. Like, I do my own sports as well, right? Like, I train jiu-jitsu, I lift, I run, whatever, and I compete with myself. We were talking about how a lot of athletes are like me versus me is one of the things. Before the show, we were talking about the me versus me mentality, which I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah, so I have that, but also it's my patient versus my patient, and just helping them win. I'm sure. So it's the same with your rings and all your successes.
Yeah.
That's cool.
No, for sure. And just to segue into what you just said about the me versus me, I think, for the athletes out there that are watching, and even if you're in business and you're a physical therapist or you're a professional of some sort, it's not who you're competing against, it's how you compete. So it doesn't matter what your competitors are doing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter like what your opponent is good or not good at. Like, what matters is how well you compete.
Yeah.
Because you can lose to a lesser competitor if you don't compete well. You could beat a better competitor if you compete well.
Sure.
Right? We both worked with Amanda Levy, pulled probably the greatest upset in like women's combat sports history.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not women's combat sports, but for sure jiu-jitsu
Right.
history. And she was able to compete to the best of her ability.
Yeah.
On a day that her number one ranked pound for pound opponent in the world did not. And it was
Slightly more than pound for pound.
yeah.
By the way.
Shit. Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Amanda weighed 155 pounds, and she beat a girl named Gabby Garcia. Gabby Garcia weighs somewhere between 250 and 300. She doesn't declare her weight at weigh-ins. That's part of her contract. And point being is that like Amanda didn't just show up, compete well, and Gabby competed poorly. Amanda dismantled Gabby's ability to want to Amanda dismantled Gabby's ability to compete well.
Yes.
And that's a big part of mindset training. It's not just teaching you how to manage yourself. Once you learn how to manage yourself, then you learn how to break your opponent.
Amazing.
So that's the fun part. Like, you and I work with a lot of 1% level athletes.
Yeah.
You know, they don't necessarily have problems to fix. They've got puzzles to solve.
Yeah.
So when they're already performing at a higher level, then, you know, you're not necessarily fixing, how do I say it? When they're already performing at a higher level, you give them skills and tools that essentially gives them an edge in those big moments.
You optimize them.
Optimize
right?
that.
Yeah. It's like the hydrogen water.
Yes. Like I don't know what percentage this helps me.
Right.
But the hydrogen water, the organic food, the methylene blue in the morning, the nootropics, like all those things together, collectively give you something that separates you from other people. So like the name of my new company, when I left my previous one, is called The Unfair Advantage.
I love that name.
For the purpose of being, I want you to go against someone who's as good or better.
Yeah.
And I want you to have something that they don't.
It's great.
I want them to feel like it's unfair to compete against you.
Absolutely.
And I think, props to you.
Thank
I think you do a great job doing the same thing.
I appreciate that.
There's a million physical therapists in the world, but there's only a very small group of people that do the things that you can do at the scale that you can do with the consistent results that you can do. So it's cool.
Thank you. That's sweet. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
It does mean the world. Yeah, and exactly because of what we said. Like, it's about the competition, and it really is. So, anyway, I'm feeling shy now.
No reason. Like I said, I have no reason to blow smoke up your ass. I think what you're doing is great.
Thanks.
And you're, I think, a testament to both yourself and myself. Is just not just the results that we have, but look at the people that seek us out.
Yeah.
You know, the people that seek us out are high level people.
Yeah.
High level people understand, like real recognizes real.
Yeah.
So, you know, if those are the sort of people that are seeking you out, then there's a reason.
Appreciate it. So let's talk more about that. Let's talk about those elite athletes. And
Yes.
like, I would love to hear from your perspective. I know I have this, I have thoughts of my own when I work with patients. I can almost spot the real elite athletes by certain things they do, but I would love to hear your experiences on what separates an elite athlete from an average athlete.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think there's like essentially 3 levels. Excuse me. I think there's 3 levels, right? There's the top 90%. Most of them coast on talent and hard work.
Yeah.
You can outwork everybody to about the top 10%. Then the top 10%, they're all talented. They all work hard. So what separates them? So there's like the top 9%, and then there's the top 1%. So the top 9%, I feel like, are really intentional in everything that they do. They got a plan for everything. The top 1% are obsessed not just on the intention, so they have the talent, they have the hard work, they have the intention, but they also are obsessed on they're very assessment oriented.
Yes.
So they're constantly evaluating yourself.
I love that.
Yeah.
This is brilliant.
Yeah.
This is literally what I harp for my therapist. Like when I'm training therapists, I'm like, you have to test retest. How do you know what you're doing is helping if you're not test retesting?
You're getting me excited.
Holy moly, I'm so excited you just said that.
Yes. So, those are people I always say if you want to have success, you have to aim in the right direction. AIM for me is an acronym. Bring attention to the thoughts and feelings that you want to have. Set intentions for what you want to do. Manage your emotions. Evaluate regularly.
Awesome.
So part of my client's success is they literally take data on themselves every day.
Yes.
So if what you can't measure, you can't manage.
Yep.
So if you're not testing and retesting, then you could feel better, but you don't. Data gives you confidence. Data gives you irreputable proof, and dopamine is released in anticipation of a reward.
Yeah.
So we can get into dopamine and why it's more performance enhancing than steroids, and that's why Penn State, in my opinion, is so successful. But ultimately, they chase the reward every day of getting better.
Yeah.
So the 1%ers are obsessed with getting better.
Yep.
Like Kobe Bryant was asked once, are you more of a guy that hates to lose, or do you love, or what is it? Do you like to win or hate to lose? And he was like, I'm neither. I like to figure it out.
I love it.
So when you're obsessed with getting better, you're always chasing something else.
It's the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everyone talks about the process, but they have no idea what the process is.
The process is figuring it out.
Yeah.
He got it.
But they don't have, there's no blueprint for what the process is.
Right.
If you ask an athlete, what's the process? A coach, what's the process?
Right.
Show up, work hard, get there early, stay late, do whatever your coach says.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee for success for that. What I figured out how to master, and part of my superpower is literally figuring out what the process is.
Yeah.
How to crush it, how to measure it, so you can manage it.
Yeah, measure it, analyze it. I love it. This is literally, I didn't expect our conversation to go this way. But I'm so pumped because that is what I'm trying to harp other physical therapists to do in their practice. Like
data-driven development.
You want to be top 1% physical therapist, you got to analyze. You got to analyze, and we call it clinical patterning in our world. But it's the same thing with the athletes. It's like once they analyze and they get the data, then even if they're not mentally processing all of that, all they have to do is see A plus B equaled C, and if I do that again next time, I'm going to crush it again. It's awesome.
So I run an 8-week course on a regular basis for high performers called Reverse Engineering Success, right? Essentially what it teaches is, okay, what does the best version of you look like?
Okay.
What are the steps that help you get there? Let me teach you a set of emotional control skills and other mental skills so you can focus on the right things. But really, like the key part of that allows people in 8 weeks to transform the way they think, the way they feel, the way they compete, is the data-driven analytics where like you're literally grading yourself on a scale of 1 to 5. How good was your emotional control today?
I love this.
On a scale of 1 to 5, like how happy were you today?
Yeah.
Which is a Penn State thing we can talk about.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 5, whatever you're trying to improve, mindset-wise, in your life, take data on it.
So how does the 8-week program work? Is it online? Is it in person?
Yeah, so it's a live group course. That's essentially how I scaled my business, so I can scale my impact, having more one-to-many. So it's a group where people apply for. I get tons of applications. Like I launch my next one in June, and we meet once a week. We have office hours on Wednesday. We meet once a week on Sundays, and they go through a similar program that Amanda Levy, Ken Aruzing, Patricky Pitbull, when he won Bellator, Zhang Wei Li. What used to be 8 weeks to fight ready is now 8 weeks to reverse engineer success.
Love it.
So, like you, if you want them to perform their best, you got to know what the best version of you looks like. Mm-hmm. My metrics are different than yours, but for me, you got to know the thoughts and feelings that bring out your best and worst, what you do and don't do, and then have a set of skills that, like, if we have outlined the roadmap, then if you want to make it feel like a GPS, then you need to have skills to help you focus on the right things when shit gets hard.
Yeah.
Because that's a big thing that also separates 1%. So the other thing that separates 1%, they're obsessed with getting better, but they're what I would call anti-fragile or hard to kill, right? So fragile people break, tough people endure but don't learn. Anti-fragile people get better, faster, stronger when shit gets hard.
Yeah.
So they are hard to kill.
They dig in. I love it.
So that's really what I focus on, is that obsession with getting better, the assessment orientation. There's brain chemistry behind that as to why it works, but that and building them to, in those most difficult moments, they will not just show up, they'll show up the best they've ever shown up. And I think Amanda's a really good example of that.
Yeah.
That is, that was a life-changing night for her, and I have nothing to do with that. She just took advice that I did and implemented strategy.
Well, I know she still uses, like we were talking about you today, and I was like, yeah, Mike's coming on the show. She's like, that's great. And she was saying, she's like, I still use the techniques that he taught me.
Amanda saw the 2.0 version of where 10.0 is now.
Yeah.
And like just very refined to where I feel like if I have the right client, right, and you understand your client profile, my client profile, if you're the right client profile, which is why I interview, right, if you're the right client profile, I can guarantee results. But that anti-fragile piece is something that's so crucial because people are coming to someone like you or me not to win the matches they're supposed to win. So when I go to the World Championships, I want to show up in the semis. I'm down by 2. There's a minute left. There's bad calls. I'm injured. Those moments is like when you want to show up the most.
That's awesome.
So I think that's really what separates it. So if I could summarize, the top 90% coast on talent and hard work. The top 9% are both those things, but they're very intentional.
Yeah.
The top 1% are really assessment oriented. They're obsessed with getting better, and they are hard to kill.
I love that.
You're going to have to genuinely be better than them and be equal in all areas and somehow find a way to pull it out.
It's funny because as you're talking, I'm picturing, like I said, I have sort of this perception of my amazing like my top 1% athletes and what makes them different. And just performance-wise with our rehab, I can see a difference. It's exactly like you say. When it gets hard, like, first of all, when I give them hard things, they're like drooling. They're like, heck yes, this is what I need. They're like animals. They're like dogs. They're like, let's go. This is what I need. When I have...
They're primal.
They're primal. That's right. I love that. when they have the 90%, they're like, oh, really? Or whatever. It's a big mindset difference.
They're thankful for the opportunity to struggle.
Yeah.
They know it won't kill them.
Yeah.
That it'll be inconvenient, but it'll make them stronger.
Yeah.
Everybody else feels like it's an obligation to suffer.
I think the other difference that I see from my end, I think a lot of it, I have something I say to people a lot. Like, I can usually tell people if I can get them better, whether or not I can get them better is if they have two things. If they believe they can get better, and if they're willing to put the work in. Mm-hmm. And exactly what you said, like, they trust that they're not going to break, but part of that comes from confidence that they're safe and they're going to be okay.
If I could say a few words on confidence, I think I made a post the other day. A lot of people have confidence confused. At least, like, having done this thousands of times, what I feel like confidence should be versus what people do. People put confidence in whether or not I can or cannot do something.
Yeah.
That's in the future. You have no control. So, of course, your brain's going to have anxiety, and our brain's designed to keep us safe. Our brain is like an overprotective mother.
Yes.
Right? Like, Mom, can I go to my friend's house? Well, like, are you going to walk? Are you going to take a bike? Like, what if this happens? What if that happens, right? Or your brain's designed to keep you safe. It's not designed for courage.
Right.
So anything that is, like, risky or is not guaranteed or, like, has risk, your brain's going to try to convince you why you shouldn't, why you can't, why you won't. So if your confidence is whether or not you can do something, then, of course, you're going to have anxiety about it. But if your confidence is in not whether or not you can do something, but a stack of proof that you're capable.
Yes.
If your confidence is in your intentions, right? My confidence is in my preparation. Like, I did everything that I possibly that I could do. I know that I can't control the outcome of whether or not this happens, but I have complete control of the process that gets there. Mm-hmm. And I've given everything that I can. I've also got a bunch of proof that even though I haven't won a world championship, here's reasons why I'm capable.
Yes.
And I remember when I tore my ACL in college, and I was really stressed. Like, so when am I going to come back? When am I going to come back?
Right.
Like, it was a very sensitive timeline because I was either going to miss wrestle-offs in the first months of the season, or I was going to make it for wrestle-offs. Like, there was a couple weeks would be the difference of a whole year.
Got it.
And my physical therapist, Kala, if you're out there somewhere, I don't know what you're doing now, but, like, this quote changed my life. Shout out. She was like, this is at University of Maryland, and she was like, you need to stack small wins. She's like, today, I want you to give me 2 more degrees of flexion. She's like, tomorrow, I want you to give me another few reps when you do this exercise. When it hurts, I want you to go a little bit farther. She's like, that's the only thing you need to worry about. Like, don't worry about when you're going to come back. You have no control over that. We don't know what's going to happen. You have complete control of giving me a few more degrees, a few more reps.
Yeah.
And literally in my journal, which I feel like is the most transformative part of my program, it's called, like, how to stack small wins.
Love it.
And that's what I learned from my physical therapist in college.
That's so awesome. And that is one of the reasons I wanted you on here. Like, yes, number one, to hear your experience with all the amazing athletes you work with and hear insights into their mindsets, but also for my physical therapist watching, who I know want to be 1% of the top physical therapists, like, what can we do? And I love that you just used your own example of that. I think, like, it's funny because I think it's super important that we collaborate with guys like you all the time with our athletes, but it's sort of like home exercise program. We have to educate ourselves in a way that we're reinforcing your work when they're here in the office with us, when they're here in the clinic with us.
Yeah. And going back to the confidence thing, it's, most athletes are like, can you fix me? Can we do this by this amount of time so I can do that?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I could tell you, like, people come to me like, I want to win this, I want to do this. I have no idea whether or not we're going to win.
Right.
But I could tell you, if you follow all my advice and you do everything that I'm telling you to do and you give me 100% and you trust me, you, like, the best version of you will show up.
I love that. That is perfect.
There's nothing that you can do to control the outcome of this injury, your recovery, or whatever. You follow everything I'm telling you you're going to do, you're going to be the absolute best position that you can be in.
Okay, so my mind is going here now, just because hearing your ACL story and hearing all the amazing insight you have for your athletes. I know you still compete. You do your blue belt jiu-jitsu.
So quick story on jiu-jitsu. So when I left the FBI, I wanted to spend more time in martial arts versus just wrestling. So I started taking jiu-jitsu classes. Let me rephrase. I was running a wrestling academy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So during the time I was in the FBI, I opened up a wrestling academy. That academy was ultimately, like, what led me here.
Okay.
The short version is I had 13 kids in the state finals first year of my academy.
Cool.
It's, like, unheard of.
Wow. Was that in San Diego also?
This was in Texas.
Oh, okay.
When I was living in Texas. 9 of them should have won. I would have bet money they would have won. 5 of them just didn't show up.
Wow.
Gave them the right advice. That was my talent, was getting the best out of people. But in the one match that mattered, undefeated kids, number 1 seeds, they just didn't show up.
Yeah,
I'm like, what am I missing?
Happens all the time.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I missing? I'm like, I can't just continue to do this and then hope that they show up.
Right.
So I hired a company to help them like fill the gap. I feel like mindset was something we were missing a system for. That filled the gap. I started working for that company. I left the FBI for that company, and then 7 years later, I started my own.
Got it.
But running a wrestling academy, I'm forgetting the question now.
So I was going to ask you how that tied into your current, like,
Oh,
I was
competing. So
yeah.
I was the wrestling coach in Houston, and I was asked to teach jiu-jitsu athletes how to wrestle. And I started teaching them how to wrestle, and I realized I need to learn jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So I started taking it. I loved it.
Yeah.
Started competing because I wanted to compete, but
Right.
also like I haven't competed. Like I'm doing all this mindset training, but I haven't competed since I was in college.
Yeah.
I was like, let me go see how well this stuff works for me.
Right.
Like I see the results of my athletes.
Yeah.
My stuff works for me. So I had 11 matches. I didn't give up a single offensive point in 11 matches.
Wow.
As a college wrestler, you got to go in like the advanced division and stuff. So I was competing against people that were, I had 3 months of jiu-jitsu experience competing against like purple or above.
Amazing.
Yeah, so that was cool. Did a super fight. It was a draw, even though I beat the guy like 11-0.
Wow.
Because it wasn't a submission.
Yeah.
Silly, but whatever. So
It was a submission only?
it was submission only.
Yeah.
And like now they have submission only or a certain amount of points.
Got ya.
Ref's decision, whatever. This was submission only. The dude was literally crying, gurgling on camera. I just didn't have enough jiu-jitsu to know how
You're
to
like-
finish a 10-finger.
right.
He's like, tears, like, that was a win, dude. Like,
You're looking at him like, can we stop this?
I'm like, can you just tap already? But, you know, like, I didn't know enough jiu-jitsu that,
Right.
like, immediately after the match, I'm like, oh, I should have done this instead of that.
Totally. That's how you learn.
Yeah, and
you
that's how you learn.
assessed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I immediately figured it out. I don't train quite as much anymore, but I probably taught hundreds of hours of wrestling to jiu-jitsu and MMA fighters, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, it's great.
Because I'm not teaching them how to wrestle. We're going into 50-50 positions where you could think like a wrestler or think like a jiu-jitsu athlete.
Yeah.
This is what a wrestler would do that a jiu-jitsu athlete is not trained to do.
Yes.
So
which is a nice advantage.
Which is a nice advantage.
Yeah.
So I worked with some pretty high profile people over the years, like Roberto Jimenez, who's competing in CJI, who's multiple-time world champion. I think he won the absolute in Nogi this year. Like, I coached him in high school. Kevin Holland was a UFC fighter that got taken down 14 times in a fight. Then we went to Fury in Philly, and he arguably beat Cody Hamra.
Wow.
Yeah. So had he not decided to do like a backflip in the last 10 seconds to do some dumb stuff,
Oh my
he
God.
would have won that match.
Yeah.
So I've gotten the opportunity to work with a lot of high-profile people, but that's ultimately what led me to jiu-jitsu. So I don't compete as much anymore because I don't have the time.
Yeah.
But when I did have the time, I competed as much as I could and didn't give up a single offensive point.
I think it's cool. What I was going for there was just like, were you able to take your own advice?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Because I think sometimes it's hard to self-reflect in the same way that we would for our patients. So I was curious if you were able to sort of step outside your own.
Here's the thing that you guys don't understand.
Yeah.
That like what JJ and I, what you struggle with, we struggle with.
Yeah.
I got the same thoughts that
Sure.
they do before they compete.
That's
I
right.
just had them less.
Yeah.
And I had a better process to deal with them.
Yeah.
So I'm warming up for my super fight. I'm supposed to fight at 7:30, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna push you to 11:30."
Ugh.
I'm like, "Bro, I literally planned the last 36 hours of my life
Wow.
to peak at 7:30.
Yes.
To include my warm up, my food, all this stuff." So I'm like, "You wanted me to go at 11:30 p.m.
Oh,
4 hours from
no.
now?" So I was like, "All right, there's nothing I can do." So I went and took a nap.
Got it. That's good.
And just like did whatever I needed to do to go compete again. So I'm getting ready. As a good promoter, they put a guy that they genuinely thought would beat me, who they thought was a good wrestler.
Yeah.
He wrestled in high school.
Ah.
It's just not the same.
Yeah. Totally not.
But he was super tough. He looked like the dude from 300, like
The Spartan dude?
Spartan dude. Like looked
I do
like
those workouts about every other week.
yes, he looks like that dude.
Yeah.
And acts like that dude. So super tough, like mad respect. But I'm coming out and I'm like, I'm the wrestling coach. Like, what if I get taken down? Like, what if I lose?
Right.
Like, I'm
all of a sudden you're like, whoa, get out of your head, get out of your head.
But like, not even like all those thoughts came through my head, and I'm like, this is normal.
Yeah.
Like these things happen every time that I
So
compete.
cool.
Like this is how my brain's designed. I'm not nervous. My brain does this every time that I've competed. I'm excited because of these reasons.
Yeah.
And so I just immediately reframe them into the right place. And people think that like you can't just dismiss these thoughts.
Right.
Like they're gonna come. And you don't reframe them once and then they're gone.
Yeah.
I don't take a deep breath and then I'm over a breakup.
Right.
Like it's maybe it's 5 seconds, 15 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever it is. Like you just got to counter those thoughts.
Yeah.
I just have them less and I counter them less. But I immediately was able to, better than I could have in college or high school, even though mindset was an advantage of mine, better than I could have before, was able to deal with those.
Because you've practiced it.
Because I teach it.
Well, but 100%. That is amazing. That's also very true.
I don't know. So do you know the percentage for learning retention on how we learn?
No.
5% of what you hear, 30% of what you see, 70% of what you do, 90% of what you teach.
Yeah.
So that's why podcasts and books, you're not retaining much. So all you that are trying to do mindset training by going all the YouTube videos and all the books, you're retaining 30% of that book at max.
Yeah.
That's not a good use of mine or your time. If you all those podcasts, it's 30%.
Right.
I'm sorry, 5%. And then the reason why mindset training like mine works, there's pen to paper that like you are doing mindset training, not talking or listening about mindset.
You're basically teaching yourself.
Yeah. So what I would have athletes do to get better at wrestling without wrestling more, I'd have them teach kids class.
That's great. That's great.
You know how much better you're getting as a physical therapist by teaching other physical therapists?
Well, trust me. I mean, honestly, I was going to tell you that when I started teaching dry needling is when my game went way up.
Yeah.
Because now, and the biggest change was the assessment, was the test, retest, like 20 times in a session. I mean, therapists, when I tell them that, they look at me like, really? You're retesting like sometimes 20 times? I'm like, yes, because then I know every single variable and I can reproduce it, and it just happens now.
The only way you can get even better than you're already doing is if you were to ask the people that attend your seminars, what else could I do better?
Yeah.
And then, because you're probably, I mean, I see people there all the time, so you clearly don't suck, right? So, like, how do I get even better? Like, in my post-course eval, I asked them, I'm like, what could I have done better in this course?
Yeah.
And there's really not much feedback for that other than, like they'll give suggestions of, like, it would have been cool if we did this.
Yeah.
Would have been cool if we did that. And I've added their suggestions. So, but even for us, like, assessing what we're doing and not doing well.
Well, I'm just thinking, as you're saying that, I think I might start having my therapist on my courses teach something at the end of the course to another person.
Best coach I've ever been in,
Yeah.
R.I.P. Mike Krause.
Yeah.
Literally the best coach I've ever seen in any sport ever. He's a guy that, he was a clinician more than he was a coach, although he did build a lot of like youth programs and teams. He was the #1 youth clinician in the country. I've done a lot of camps with him before he died. And he would walk into a room with different experience levels, different ages, different sports. Could be jiu-jitsu and wrestling. Everyone walks out learning, like knowing how to do the move.
So cool.
Like that's the real, like you could be flashy and exciting, but does everyone actually able to, do they have fun learning the material and can implement it? His son was autistic. So one of the things that he would do, the two things that he did in his things that were different than everybody else that allowed retention. One, he would make people demonstrate constantly. Most clinicians just show the move. All right, 1, 2, 3, let's go practice.
Yeah.
Right? He made people show it constantly.
Love it.
You didn't know you don't know if you're going to get called on.
Yeah.
So you paid attention because you don't want to be the idiot in the room. That was one. Two, he would constantly repeat himself because that's what he had to do to his son. So he was like, all right, guys, we're putting the hand to the leg, the hand to the leg, the hand to the what?
Love
the hand
it.
to the what?
Love it.
Right?
That's awesome.
Like yeah, you don't.
You just hear it.
You just hear.
Yeah.
The repetition. 1, 2, making people demonstrate. 3, he held people accountable. The second they weren't paying attention, called them out in front of everybody. Everybody had to do push-ups.
Love it. Love it.
I brought him to a jiu-jitsu gym.
Yeah.
And a bunch of grown people.
And he had him doing push-ups?
And he's doing push-ups. And
So
they're like,
great.
what the fuck?
That's how I raised my kids, honestly. But it was a positive.
It was positive.
It was. It wasn't like you're being punished, you're doing push-ups. It was like, you need a healthy activity.
Yeah.
We're going to do some push-ups.
Yeah. Well, it was, he would call them out. He'd be like, you're not working hard enough. Everybody push-ups. These grown-ass people are like, what the fuck?
That's so funny.
And like the first couple times they were annoyed, but like halfway through they were just so.
They're like, I'm happy and I'm going to focus.
But they were all about it.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
R.I.P. Mike.
R.I.P. Mike. I wish I knew Mike.
Everyone should have known Mike.
Yeah.
He was literally the greatest coach I've ever seen of any sport, and I get to work with a lot of amazing ones. My biggest regret for him is that more coaches of more sports didn't learn from him.
Yeah.
I learned so much. He was my homie.
Well, they're learning from him right now because you're still talking about him.
Still talking about it,
Yeah.
and that's what we all said when he died, and thousands of posts went out. Like hundreds of people flew in for his funeral.
Wow.
Like I was across the country on a work trip. I drove overnight with a 3-hour layover on a red eye just to make it to his funeral because like I'm like gonna tear up thinking about it.
Yeah.
To be to his funeral just because like I wanted to pay respects. Like
Yeah.
how much of an amazing human he was, not just to me,
Right.
but to so many people. And we all said that like we just wish more people could have known Mike. Because those of us that were close to him obviously had like a lot of positivity from having us in his life. But kids that went to his clinic when they were 6, they still remember the shit that he said.
That's awesome.
You know, like he just has so many like sayings.
Yeah.
That like kids 20 years later were posting like, I never forgot when you said this. I say this to my kids now.
That's cool.
Anyways.
I love it. No, that's important.
Yeah.
I was thinking when you were talking about him saying like hand on the leg, I've been doing the primal locomotion stuff. It's really, a lot of it comes from GMB Fitness. I'm a trainer for them. And like, I still, to this day, when I'm doing backwards bear, it's opposite arm and leg move together. I literally say it out loud. And I tell my patients all the time, because otherwise you get tripped up. And like, you have to like say it out loud. It's
My
so funny.
mom helped me study when I was a kid using like songs and words. So I'll never forget. The definition of an orchid is a group of growing fruit trees.
Yes. When I tell my kids my phone number, I had them sing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when they say it, they still sing it.
So I use a lot of acronyms. Like the 4 core values of my program is grit, gratitude, resilience, intentionality, total commitment.
Great.
Like the best athletes, like that's what, the true 1%ers, what I noticed, conversation for another time, but when I consolidated information is like, when I want to create a program, what am I building? Like I love the word grit, but I was looking for something that started with G because of gratitude.
Yeah.
Because gratitude's like hands-on the most performing,
100%.
hands-on the performance-enhancing attitude. Your bracelet on the inside of it.
I got one.
Yeah, your bracelet on the inside of it says gratitude. You can't see it because they don't make it that way.
Oh,
But
that's amazing.
Yeah, so like the most important thing, gratitude should always be like the dominant attitude in everything you do. I'm thankful and excited to compete, not worried about winning or losing. Thankfulness and depression cannot coexist. Thankfulness and stress do not coexist in your brain. It's oil and water.
Yes.
The more oil you have, the less water you have. The more water you have, the less oil you can have. So gratitude, resilience, intentionality, total commitment. If you want to, you want to focus on the right things, aim in the right direction. Attention, intention, manage emotions, evaluate. You should be aiming for peace. Preparation, effort, attitude, competitiveness, and energy management. Like
Good
acronyms
stuff.
is what helps these people
Sure.
remember. So
Yeah.
that's what's going to help physical therapists, sports coaches, business owners to relay information. That's how we learned. Like, remember how we learned as kids.
Yeah.
Remember how we learn in sports. Now do that shit in your business.
That's great. That was my other question for you, was like, because my podcast is mainly, a lot of our patients watch because there's a lot of clinical information at times, but really my sort of mission is to help other physical therapists be in that top 1% of PTs. And this is all great stuff for that. Like not only for them to use, not only for you guys to use for your athletes that you're treating, but for you to use for yourself, as you're saying, in your business.
And if they want to, if you want your athletes to be a certain way, then you need to model that behavior.
Yes.
This is the one thing that Cale Sanderson has that nobody else has. People could talk about gratitude. People talk about how faith is important.
Yeah.
Penn State almost exclusively recruits faith-based wrestlers, right? So a lot of coaches will talk about God, but what they don't know about, like, talk about God, don't worry about winning or losing, right? Their messaging doesn't really come across like that when they're in the practice room, because they work with a lot of those, like, top 10 kids in the country, D1. But they could talk a lot about it, but they don't necessarily back it up. So how does Cale back it up? Cale can genuinely say that he doesn't care about winning or losing because his Olympic gold medal's in a sock drawer somewhere.
Right.
The only pictures in his home, you would never know he was a wrestling coach if you went into his home. The only pictures on his wall is Jesus and his family.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow.
So he could genuinely say, no, I don't care about winning or losing.
Right.
Because where are all my trophies for being the most accomplished person ever?
Yeah.
In the basement. I don't care. Like the purpose for them is to glorify God using the gifts that God gave them. Like that's, wrestling is the vehicle for them to do that. So point being, whatever you're trying to model, like Cale is one of the only people really, truly that models that behavior. So of course his kids are going to talk about how wrestling's always fun. Mm-hmm. Of course his kids are going to talk about they don't care about winning or losing.
Yeah.
This isn't advice. They look at the person that is their leader, and their leader embodies that literally to the core. Cale, this is the biggest match in wrestling history. What are your thoughts? Well, kids are going to weigh in. I hope they all make weight.
That's right.
Hope they all make weight. We're going to wrestle some matches.
Yeah.
Hope you score some points.
Yeah.
Fun to watch. And it's just wrestling.
I love what you're saying about, like, as physical therapists. I think you were saying, like, we have to lead, like
You have to lead by
someone
example.
like Cale Sanderson.
Yes.
Like, yes.
You have to
by
lead
example.
like Cale Sanderson, where like you have to embody, not talk about it, not post about it.
Yeah.
Like your clients need to, like, the behavior you want them to model, you need a model.
Yeah.
You want your partner to act a certain way, like in your personal relationships.
Right.
Model that behavior.
Yes.
You want your kids to act a certain way, you better model that behavior.
It's like, do what you learned in kindergarten, right? Like what your parents taught you, like treat people the way you want to be treated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of thing.
Now, interesting. You know what so the golden rule in life is treat people the way you want to be treated, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You want to know what the golden rule in sports is?
What?
Treat people the way you don't want to be treated.
Oh my God. Well, some sports.
Respectfully.
Oh.
Treat people the way you don't want to be treated
Respectfully.
What do you hate that somebody does? This was our game plan against Gabby. Like,
Okay.
what would you hate somebody to do, right? Like, what are the things we don't like? So she cleared every collar tie, like talk shit at weigh-ins,
Yeah.
like put her hands in her face, like
Yeah.
made her uncomfortable, pushed a lot of pace and pressure. So do unto you as you do unto others as you don't.
As you don't want done unto you?
Yeah.
I got you.
I was struggling. So
in the
the golden rule of life is treat people the way you want to be treated. The golden rule in combat sports, treat people the way you don't want to be treated, respectfully and legally.
I love that. And they'll get it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, your opponent's going to get it if you're in a combat sport. Obviously, I don't have to justify that. But for the physical therapists that aren't into combat sports, I think they should understand that, like, they're going to get it.
Yeah.
You know?
And, we were talking about competition and me versus me and stuff. Like, instead of comparing, like, what we're doing to, like, well, this physical therapist is doing this, and that physical therapist is doing that. Like, don't worry about what they're doing or not doing. What are the top performers in your field doing?
Yes.
How can you model that behavior? How can you model their tactics and strategies into the way it fits in your business?
Yeah.
And then relentlessly work on being the absolute best version of yourself.
This is so great because I just had this conversation with a friend today who's been trying to get one of his high-profile buddies who's an athlete to come see me, and I think he's been hesitant because he's working with another physical therapist. And I said, listen, a great physical therapist is not intimidated by working by any of their athletes working with another great one. Everybody has their specialties, and I have my specialties. His guy has his specialties. There's no reason we can't all treat these people. You know what I mean?
Let's say the athlete is John. We should all be on Team John.
Exactly. It's
like
not Team
if
JJ.
he wins,
that's right.
We all win.
We all win. Exactly.
We all win.
Yes. So that
Ego.
is that's great advice too for our PTs watching. Is like, number one, don't be intimidated by your peers, which is what you just said. Like, instead, embrace them, send to them when they're doing something that they're better at than you. And then if you're really good at something, which you should be, then they're going to send back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A good piece of advice I've been given is no one will ever criticize you that's doing more than you.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, I love that.
And that's something, like, we've always heard the grass is always green. Don't worry about the grass on the other side is greener where you water it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of the way I was trying to parallel it. So let me go backwards. No one will criticize you that's doing more than you. So the only opinions you should value, right, are the people that either you love or that are doing more than you.
Yeah.
Right? So instead of comparing yourself to other people and you're not other people, like, look at the people that are successful in your field, model the stuff that they can do. Like, no one's ever going to recreate Penn State. But I feel like I'm one of the only people to meticulously study their program. Well, what makes them successful? What are the aspects of their culture and the way that they do things and they recruit and this, that, like, I could help other people understand and model in their program.
Yeah.
Right? So a high school wrestling program, a college wrestling program, a professional athlete, like, hey, listen, you'll never be these people and you don't necessarily want to be. You want to be you. But these are the things that they do well that you can incorporate into your plan. And that's how people should look at how to grow their business. Instead of comparing yourself to other people or worrying about what they're doing, focus on you.
That's right.
Whether or not you do well is whether or not your business does well.
Me versus me. Mm-hmm. Nice stuff.
Yeah.
You're awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I enjoy these things, and especially, like, you and I like to hang around with like-minded people. So anytime I get to chat with somebody that was on the same.
I feel like we got so lucky with this because Mike's on the West Coast, and, like, we were going to do this virtually.
Yeah.
And then Mike was like, hey, I'm actually going to be really close to you. So
yeah.
I really appreciate you making the.
Thank you for making the time
trip.
as well.
Yeah. Anything else you want to? Any other questions? I feel like we covered it all. I usually end with advice from my physical therapist, but you just covered it.
Yeah.
So if there's anything else, I want to make sure you guys know how to contact Mike because he is a gem and really does give people an unfair advantage. The name of his company is absolutely 100% correct.
Correct.
So you can find him, Mindset Mike, on social media. Unfair Advantage is his company. I'm sure you can Google him or DM me.
UnfairAdvantageMindset.com. You can find out more information there.
There you go.
Instagram's the easiest way to contact me. And I would say, like, if you're in business or you're in sports, like, if you're serious about it, it's because you want to be the best, right? So I'll say two things. One, don't try to be the best, be yourself, right? But if you want to be yourself, then you have to understand what the best version of you looks like.
Yeah.
So being yourself isn't cool when you don't know what the best version of you looks like.
Yeah.
So let's learn what the best version of you looks like, which is what I teach people. That's, like, what I make a living on. One. Two, like, everyone wants to be the best, so you're aspiring to be in that top 1%, right? So if you want to get there, you want to close the gap quickly, then again, you may not have the resources, you may not have the money, you may not have the time, you may not have the staff, you may not have all these things. Tony Robbins, I saw a video of Tony Robbins, and I quit my job at the FBI the next day.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and I used to make fun of Tony Robbins because he's like, I mean, who's this motivational speaker, lurch-looking dude
Right.
with his big teeth and raspy voice, talking all this stuff. I saw this video, maybe quit my job the next day, but it ties in my advice. And it was, all of you here that come to see me, like, he was naming all these high-profile jobs of all the people that were there. You know, anyways, he was naming all these people. And he was like, you're all saying you don't lack the resources, or you lack the resources. You don't have the time. You don't have the staff. You don't have the technology. He's like, you don't lack resources. You lack resourcefulness.
Oh, that's good.
And he's like, the ultimate resource is emotional states. So he was saying, he's like, and this relates to something I do with my clients now, but he was like, sometimes if you want to take can I curse?
Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes he's like, if you want to take the fucking island, you got to burn your fucking boats.
Love
you can't
it.
be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like, there is no plan B. So I say all that to say is that, like, no one lacks the resources. People with much less have done more. People with much more have done less. So if you want to be in the 1%, then look at what the 1% are doing and then see what aspects of, like, their business, their culture, their this, their that, their social media that you can model in a way that fits for your business. And that's the quickest way that you can climb the ladder to get to where you want to go. And, you know, I think that applies in school, wrestling, sports, business, life.
Amen.
Amen.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was amazing. You guys, you got to check him out. I know you will because he's amazing. And thanks for joining me. You got a lot of great advice here for both your athletes, your patients, yourself, your personal relationships. As you said, it applies to everything. So can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
You guys, we'll talk soon. Take care.